I now have an irrational fear of two things: the sound of a car alarm and the goddamn, perpetually understanding smirk on my new neighbor Kyan's face. It all started at 2 in the morning, which is my prime time for existential dread and general catastrophizing. I couldn't sleep. My brain runs on a special blend of stale coffee and worst-case scenarios, so I was doing my usual thing. Peering through the blinds of my second-floor apartment window. My unit overlooks the resident parking lot, and sometimes I just watch, not in a creepy way, I hope. It's more like I'm the self-appointed, unpaid, and deeply unqualified night watchman for a dozen slightly used sedans. I play out these little horror movies in my head, a tire slashing here, a hit and run there. It's a stupid habit, but last night, it felt like one of them had leaked into reality. A figure emerged from the deep shadows near the dumpster. He was wearing a dark hood pulled way up, which is basically the international uniform for I'm up to no good. But the face, God, the face, it was a mask. It wasn't a cheap Halloween mask either, it was worse. It was smooth, white, and disturbingly serene, like the face of a crash test dummy right before impact, completely featureless. And the way he moved, not like a normal person walking. It was a slow, gliding motion, like he was conserving every ounce of energy for whatever awful thing he was about to do. He moved with that unnerving calm straight towards a silver Toyota Camry. My silver Toyota Camry, my trusty, boring, utterly reliable Camry, the one thing in my life that just works. I know it was mine. I could just make out the familiar dent on the rear bumper from a rogue shopping cart incident and the faded National Park sticker on the window. My heart did this thing where it just stopped for a second, then started hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. My hands went cold. This was it. It was actually happening. Right outside my window, a faceless ghoul was about to steal my 10-year-old car. My brain, which usually operates at the speed of a dial-up modem, suddenly kicked into overdrive. Every detail I saw was being processed through this high-octane fear filter. The mask, for instance, it wasn't just white, it was unnaturally white, catching the sickly yellow glow of the parking lot lamps in a way that made it look like it was faintly glowing. I was half convinced it was some kind of porcelain doll face, hard and cold. My mind started racing. Is he hiding his identity? Obviously, but why a mask like that? Is it a gang thing, a cult? Is he going to perform some kind of ritual on my car before he steals it? Then he reached into his pocket, my breath hitched in my throat. He pulled out something. It was metallic, glinting under the light. From my vantage point, it looked like one of those intricate tool kits you see in spy movies, a little black case full of picks and tension wrenches. A professional, he wasn't some joyriding teenager, he was a goddamn car-stealing artisan. He knelt down, his movements economical and practiced, and began to work on the driver's side door lock. The sound was faint, but my brain amplified it into a series of sinister clicks and scrapes. Click, scrape, click, the sound of my security being methodically dismantled. I was 100% certain it was my car. I'm a creature of habit. I park in the exact same spot every single day. Third from the left, right next to the sad, perpetually dying oak tree. That was my spot, his spot. His hands were working at my lock. I should have called the cops right then and there. A normal, well-adjusted person would have, but here's the thing. About 6 months ago, I called them because I was convinced a raccoon on my balcony was actually a burglar trying to jimmy the sliding glass door. The two officers who showed up looked at me with a level of pity I usually reserve for people who voluntarily eat kale. I swore to myself I would never be raccoon guy again. I needed proof, hard, undeniable proof. So I did what any sane, terrified person would do. I grabbed my phone, fumbled with the passcode because my thumbs were shaking, and opened the camera app. I started recording, trying to zoom in on the masked man. The footage was garbage, a shaky, blurry mess that looked like it was filmed during an earthquake, but in my panic-addled mind it was my Zapruder film. It was my evidence. I was going to be the hero of this story, the guy who caught the phantom Camry thief of Oakwood Apartments. Okay, so direct confrontation was out. Calling the cops was, for the moment, a last resort. My brain, now fizzing with a cocktail of adrenaline and bad ideas, landed on a plan. A brilliant plan. A plan that felt in that moment like something straight out of an action movie. I was going to use psychological warfare. I was going to scare him off. I still had my spare car key fob on the little dish by the door where I throw my mail. It had the red panic button, the button of chaos. The idea was simple. I'd press it, the car alarm would shriek like a banshee, the lights would flash, and Mr. Blankface would crap his pants and bolt back into the shadows from whence he came. It was perfect. Non-violent, effective, and I wouldn't even have to put on pants. I crept over to the dish, my bare feet silent on the cheap laminate flooring. I snatched the keys, my heart thudding a frantic rhythm against my sternum. I held the fob up like it was a holy relic, aimed it through the blinds, and pressed down hard on that beautiful, beautiful red button. The result was instantaneous and glorious. Wee-oh-oh-wee-oh. The alarm ripped through the silent night. My car's headlights started strobing, turning the parking lot into a low-budget disco. I watched, a triumphant grin spreading across my face, waiting for the shadowy figure to flee. He didn't flee. He jumped back from the car door, startled, which was a good start. But then he just stood there. He looked around, his masked face turning from left to right. Then, instead of running, he did something I absolutely did not expect. He got angry. He let out a muffled curse. I couldn't hear the words, but the body language was universal, and he kicked the front tire. Hard. This was not the reaction of a spooked thief. This was the reaction of a professional whose delicate work had been rudely interrupted. In my mind, this wasn't fear, it was fury. He wasn't scared of getting caught. He was pissed off that his job just got harder. The alarm blared on, a soundtrack to my rapidly escalating panic. My brilliant plan hadn't worked. In fact, it had done the opposite. It had confirmed my worst fears. This guy wasn't an amateur, he was bold, he was committed. And now he was angry. My little psychological warfare tactic had just poked the bear. Okay, wow, a lot of comments already. A bunch of you are asking why I didn't just yell out the window or call 911 right then. Look, you have to understand. The cops in my neighborhood, let's just say their response time is more of a suggestion. I once ordered a pizza and the delivery guy arrived before the ambulance for my neighbor who slipped on some ice. Seriously, calling them would mean sitting on hold, describing the guy, describing my car, and by the time they rolled up, he'd be halfway to the next state with my Camry. And yelling. What if this guy had a weapon? I'm on the second floor, sure, but I'm not bulletproof. People are crazy. For all I knew, he was high on something and my voice would just set him off. I live alone. My entire self-defense arsenal consists of a can of wasp spray and a very heavy textbook on macroeconomics. I had to think about my own safety first. I pictured him looking up, seeing my silhouette in the window, and then deciding that a witness was a loose end he needed to tie up. No thank you. Getting the whole thing on video to give to the police later seemed like the smartest, safest play. It felt strategic. It felt right at the time. You weren't there. It's easy to be brave from behind a keyboard. My first plan had failed spectacularly. The car alarm eventually timed out, plunging the parking lot back into a tense, strobing silence. The masked man was still there, now pacing back and forth in front of my car like a caged animal. He seemed to be muttering to himself. My fear was curdling into a strange kind of righteous indignation. How dare he be so brazen? I needed a new plan, a more proactive plan. My eyes scanned my apartment, searching for inspiration. They landed on a bright orange super soaker leaning against the wall in the corner of my living room. It was a gift for my nephew's birthday that I hadn't gotten around to wrapping yet. It was the XP-100 model, the one with the pump-action handle and a reservoir the size of a small dog. My brain, now completely untethered from logic, latched onto it. I was going to give this guy a baptism. I grabbed the water gun, ran to the kitchen sink, and filled it to the brim with cold water. It felt absurdly heavy in my hands. This was insane. I knew it was insane, but I was too far down the rabbit hole to turn back. I crept back to the window, my heart pounding a drum solo in my ears. I slowly, carefully slid the window open just enough to poke the barrel of the super soaker through the gap. The night air was cool on my face. I could smell the damp asphalt and the faint scent of jasmine from my neighbor's balcony. I took aim, I centered the orange nozzle right on the back of his hooded head. My finger was on the trigger. I was about to unleash a high-pressure stream of municipal water on a suspected felon. And then, in a moment of what I can only describe as cosmically bad timing, the slow, steady sweep of headlights rounded the corner at the end of the street. A police cruiser. A real, honest-to-God police cruiser doing a routine patrol. It was a miracle, a dumb luck coincidence of the highest order. Yes, I breathed, lowering the water gun. Finally, the masked man saw it too, his head snapped up. And what did he do? He immediately dropped into a crouch, hiding himself behind the trunk of my Camry, perfectly concealed from the street. My blood ran cold. This wasn't just some guy, this was a professional who knew police patrol patterns. He knew how to disappear. He was using my car as cover. I held my breath as the cruiser ambled past. The officer inside didn't even glance at the parking lot. The car continued down the road and disappeared around the next bend. The moment it was gone, the man stood back up, brushed himself off, and went right back to work on the car door as if nothing had happened. That was the exact moment my sanity packed its bags and left town. The last shred of doubt I had was vaporized. This guy wasn't just a thief, he was a ninja, a ghost. He was calm, collected, and completely undeterred by either a car alarm or a police presence. My pathetic little super soaker plan felt like bringing a squirt gun to a nuclear war. I was out of my depth and he was about to get into my car. That was it, the final straw. The part of my brain responsible for rational thought just short-circuited. All the fear, all the frustration, all the righteous indignation boiled over into a single, desperate act of confrontation. My self-preservation instincts were screaming at me to stay quiet, to stay hidden, but they were drowned out by a primal urge to protect my territory, to protect my damn Camry. I shoved the window open with a loud rattle, leaned out into the cool night air and yelled. I really yelled. It wasn't a clever line or a witty threat. It was a raw, guttural sound that clawed its way out of my throat, fueled by 2 hours of sleepless paranoia. Hey, get the hell away from my car. I've already called the cops, you bastard. The effect was instantaneous. The figure below froze, his hand still on the car door. He was completely still like a statue. For a terrifying second, I thought he was going to pull out a gun and I'd just signed my own death warrant. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, broken only by the chirping of crickets and the distant hum of the highway. I could feel my own pulse in my ears, then slowly he straightened up. He turned not towards the street to run, but towards my window. He raised his hands and with a single fluid motion he peeled the mask off his face. It wasn't a mask, it was one of those sheet face masks. The kind my sister uses, a flimsy, papery thing soaked in some kind of translucent, slimy goop. He crumpled it into a wet ball in his fist, revealing not the face of a hardened criminal, but the face of a very tired, very confused-looking guy in his late 20s. He had dark circles under his eyes and his hair was damp with sweat. He looked less like a car thief and more like someone who had just lost a fight with a jellyfish. He looked up at me, squinting against the light from my window. "Your car," he yelled back, his voice laced with pure, unadulterated confusion. It wasn't angry, just baffled. "What are you talking about? This is my car. My stupid key fob died and the manual lock is jammed or something. I've been out here for 20 minutes. My brain refused to process this. It was a trick, a lie, he was trying to gaslight me. "No, it's not," I shouted back, my voice cracking with a pathetic mix of fear and conviction. "That's my car, I know my dent. I see the sticker." The guy sighed, a sound of profound exhaustion that carried all the way up to my window. It was the sigh of a man who had reached the absolute limit of his patience with the universe. He didn't argue, he didn't threaten, he just pointed. He pointed a single, trembling finger to the parking spot right next to the one he was standing at. "Dude," he said, his voice flat, "and just look." I followed his finger and there it was, another silver Toyota Camry, identical in every boring beige detail, pristine, untampered with. And sitting right in the middle of its rear bumper like a badge of honor was my familiar, beloved, shopping cart-induced dent. My National Park sticker was there too, clinging stubbornly to the glass. My gaze flickered between the two cars. His car, my car, his car, my car, the world tilted on its axis. A forgotten memory surfaced with the force of a tidal wave. An email from the building management that afternoon. A brightly colored subject line, important, parking lot maintenance. Something about repainting the parking lines tomorrow. Please move your vehicle forward one space to allow our crew's access. An email I had read, processed, acted upon, and then immediately purged from my brain to make room for more anxiety. The man standing in the parking lot, looking up at me with an expression of weary disbelief, wasn't a phantom thief. He wasn't a cultist or a ninja. He was the guy who had just moved into apartment 2 billion right across the hall. His name was Kyan. We'd nodded to each other in the hallway yesterday. He was my neighbor. And I had just spent the last half hour treating him like he was the star of a true crime documentary. What followed was, without a doubt, the longest and most excruciating 5 minutes of my entire life. The descent down the stairs from my apartment felt like a walk of shame. My legs were shaky, my brain was a static-filled wasteland, and I was acutely aware that I was wearing nothing but a faded t-shirt and plaid pajama bottoms. I pushed open the heavy main door and stepped out into the humid night air. Kyan was still standing there, leaning against his car, the crumpled, wet face mask still clutched in his hand. The car alarm I had triggered had left a lingering smell of burnt electronics in the air. I began, the sound dying in my throat. My entire vocabulary had abandoned me. He just looked at me, no anger, no menace, just a profound, bone-deep weariness. "So," he said, his voice quiet now, "you're the guy in 2A. "Yeah, Arlo." "Hi," I offered a weak, pathetic wave. "Look, man, I am so sorry." He finally managed a small, tired smile. "It's the mask, isn't it?" He held up the soggy white sheet. "My sister swears by these things," said I looked stressed. I just got off a double shift at the hospital. I'm a resident over at St. Jude's. I figured I'd slap one on for the drive home to, decompress. A hospital resident. Of course, that explained the exhaustion, the late hours. The Swiss Army knife he'd been using on the lock was probably for opening stubborn medical packaging, not for grand theft auto. Every single sinister detail my paranoid brain had latched onto had a perfectly mundane, depressingly logical explanation. I thought you were stealing my car, I mumbled, the words tasting like ash in my mouth. I saw the mask, the hoodie, my brain went there. Yeah, I got that, he said, letting out a short, humorless laugh, especially when the car alarm went off. That was you. I nodded, feeling my face burn with shame, and I almost shot you with a super soaker. He stared at me for a beat, then actually laughed, a real laugh this time. A super soaker, seriously. It was for my nephew, I said, as if that made it any better. The story I had constructed, a story of a cunning, masked thief, had crumbled into this. A sleep-deprived me, in my pajamas, apologizing to my equally sleep-deprived neighbor, who just wanted to get into his own damn car after a long day of saving lives. I hadn't protected my property because my property was never in danger. All I had done was announce to my new neighbor that I was the resident paranoid lunatic. The welcome wagon from hell, so thank you all for the comments. A lot of you found this hilarious, and a few of you rightly pointed out that I am, in fact, the asshole in this situation. I agree, after reading through everything I can confirm. I am the weirdo neighbor everyone secretly hopes they don't get. The aftermath has been awkward. I've been trying to time my entrances and exits to avoid him, but our schedules finally collided this morning in the elevator. It was just the two of us. The silence was deafening. He was holding a travel mug of coffee and looked significantly more human without a sheet mask on. I was just staring at the floor, praying for a swift and painless death. Just as the doors were about to open on the ground floor, he cleared his throat. I braced myself. And he just looked at me, took a sip of his coffee, and said with a perfectly straight face, "Rough night. Could offer you a face mask, great for de-stressing." Then he gave me that little smirk, the one I now see in my nightmares, and walked out. I think I need to move.